Chapter X, The Duel. Syme sat down at a cafe table with his companions, his blue eyes sparkling like the bright sea below, and ordered a bottle of Saumur with a pleased impatience. He was for some reason in a condition of curious hilarity. His spirits were already unnaturally high. They rose as the Saumur sank, and in half an hour his talk was a torrent of nonsense. He professed to be making out a plan of the conversation which was going to ensue between himself and the deadly Marquis. He jotted it down wildly with a pencil. It was arranged like a printed catechism, with questions and answers, and was delivered with an extraordinary rapidity of utterance. I shall approach. Before taking off his hat, I shall take off my own. I shall say, the Marquis de Saint-Eustache, I believe. He will say, the celebrated Mr. Syme, I presume. He will say in the most exquisite French, how are you? I shall reply in the most exquisite Cockney, oh, just the Syme. Oh, shut it, said the man in spectacles. Pull yourself together and chuck away that bit of paper. What are you really going to do? But it was a lovely catechism, said Syme pathetically. Do let me read it you. It has only 43 questions and answers, and some of the Marquis's answers are wonderfully witty. I like to be just to my enemy. But what's the good of it all? Asked Dr. Bull in exasperation. It leads up to my challenge, don't you see, said Syme, beaming, when the Marquis has given the 39th reply, which runs, has it by any chance occurred to you, asked the professor with a ponderous simplicity, that the Marquis may not say all the 43 things you have put down for him? In that case, I understand, your own epigrams may appear somewhat more forced. Syme struck the table with a radiant face. Why, how true that is, he said, and I never thought of it. Sir, you have an intellect beyond the common. You will make a name. Oh, you're as drunk as an owl, said the doctor. It only remains, continued Syme, quite unperturbed, to adopt some other method of breaking the ice, if I may so express it, between myself and the man I wish to kill. And since the course of a dialogue cannot be predicted by one of its parties alone, as you have pointed out with such recondite acumen, the only thing to be done, I suppose, is for the one party, as far as possible, to do all the dialogue by himself. And so I will, by George. And he stood up suddenly, his yellow hair blowing in the slight sea breeze. A band was playing in a café chantant hidden somewhere among the trees, and a woman had just stopped singing. On Syme's heated head, the bray of the brass band seemed like the jar and jingle of that barrel organ in Leicester Square, to the tune of which he had once stood up to die. He looked across to the little table where the Marquis sat. The man had two companions now, solemn Frenchmen in frock coats and silk hats, one of them with the red rosette of the Legion of Honor, evidently people of a solid social position. Besides these black, cylindrical costumes, the Marquis, in his loose straw hat and light spring cloth, looked bohemian and even barbaric, but he looked the Marquis. Indeed, one might say that he looked the king with his animal elegance, his scornful eyes, and his proud head lifted against the purple sea. But he was no Christian king, at any rate. He was rather some swarthy despot, half Greek, half Asiatic, who, in the days when slavery seemed natural, looked down on the Mediterranean, on his galley and his groaning slaves. Just so, Syme thought, would the brown gold face of such a tyrant have shone against the dark green olives and the burning blue. Are you going to address the meeting? Asked the professor peevishly, seeing that Syme still stood up without moving. Syme drained his last glass of sparkling wine. I am, he said, pointing across to the Marquis and his companions, that meeting displeases me. I am going to pull that meeting's great, ugly, mahogany-colored nose. He stepped across swiftly, if not quite steadily. The Marquis, seeing him, arched his black Assyrian eyebrows in surprise, but smiled politely. You are Mr. Syme, I think, he said. Syme bowed. And you are the Marquis de Saint-Eustache, he said gracefully. Permit me to pull your nose. He leant over to do so, but the Marquis started backwards, upsetting his chair, and the two men in top hats held Syme back by the shoulders. This man has insulted me, said Syme with gestures of explanation. Insulted you? Cried the gentleman with the red rosette. When? Oh, just now, said Syme recklessly. He insulted my mother.
insulted your mother?" exclaimed the gentleman incredulously. "Well, anyhow," said Syme, conceding a point, "my aunt." "But how can the Marquis have insulted your aunt just now?" said the second gentleman with some legitimate wonder. "Ah, it was what he said," said darkly. "I said nothing at all," said the Marquis, "except something about the band. I only said that I liked Wagner played well." "It was an allusion to my family," said Syme firmly. "My aunt played Wagner badly. It was a painful subject. We are always being insulted about it." "This seems most extraordinary," said the gentleman who was décoré, looking doubtfully at the Marquis. "Oh, I assure you," said Syme earnestly, "the whole of your conversation was simply packed with sinister allusions to my aunt's weaknesses." "This is nonsense," said the second gentleman. "I, for one, have said nothing for half an hour, except that I liked the singing of that girl with black hair." "Well, there you are again," said indignantly. "My aunt's was red." "It seems to me," said the other, "that you are simply seeking a pretext to insult the Marquis." "By George," said Syme, facing round and looking at him, "what a clever chap you are." The Marquis started up with eyes flaming like a tiger's. "Seeking a quarrel with me?" he cried. "Seeking a fight with me? By God, there was never a man who had to seek long. These gentlemen will perhaps act for me. There are still 4 hours of daylight. Let us fight this evening." Syme bowed with a quite beautiful graciousness. "Marquis," he said, "your action is worthy of your fame and blood. Permit me to consult for a moment with the gentleman in whose hands I shall place myself." In 3 long strides he rejoined his companions, and they, who had seen his champion-inspired attack and listened to his idiotic explanations, were quite startled at the look of him. For now that he came back to them, he was quite sober, a little pale, and he spoke in a low voice of passionate practicality. "I have done it," he said hoarsely. "I have fixed a fight on the beast. But look here and listen carefully. There is no time for talk. You are my seconds, and everything must come from you. Now you must insist, and insist absolutely, on the duel coming off after 7 tomorrow, so as to give me the chance of preventing him from catching the 7:45 for Paris. If he misses that, he misses his crime. He can't refuse to meet you on such a small point of time and place. But this is what he will do. He will choose a field somewhere near a wayside station, where he can pick up the train. He is a very good swordsman, and he will trust to killing me in time to catch it. But I can fence well too, and I think I can keep him in play at least until the train is lost. Then perhaps he may kill me to console his feelings. You understand? Very well then, let me introduce you to some charming friends of mine." And leading them quickly across the parade, he presented them to the Marquis's seconds by 2 very aristocratic names of which they had not previously heard. Syme was subject to spasms of singular common sense, not otherwise a part of his character. They were, as he said of his impulse about the spectacles, poetic intuitions, and they sometimes rose to the exaltation of prophecy. He had correctly calculated in this case the policy of his opponent. When the Marquis was informed by his seconds that Syme could only fight in the morning, he must fully have realized that an obstacle had suddenly arisen between him and his bomb-throwing business in the capital. Naturally, he could not explain this objection to his friends, so he chose the course which Syme had predicted. He induced his seconds to settle on a small meadow not far from the railway, and he trusted to the fatality of the first engagement. When he came down very coolly to the field of honor, no one could have guessed that he had any anxiety about a journey. His hands were in his pockets, his straw hat on the back of his head, his handsome face brazen in the sun. But it might have struck a stranger as odd that there appeared in his train not only his seconds carrying the sword case, but 2 of his servants carrying a portmanteau and a luncheon basket. Early as was the hour, the sun soaked everything in warmth, and Syme was vaguely surprised to see so many spring flowers burning gold and silver in the tall grass, in which the whole company stood almost knee-deep. With the exception of the Marquis, all the men were in sombre and solemn morning dress, with hats like black chimney-pots. The little doctor especially, with the addition of his black spectacles, looked like an undertaker in a farce. Syme could not help feeling a comic contrast between this funerary church parade of apparel and a rich and glistening meadow, growing wildflowers everywhere. But indeed, this comic contrast between the yellow blossoms and the black hats was but a symbol of the tragic contrast between the yellow blossoms and the black business. On his right was a little wood. Far away to his left lay the long curve of the railway line, which he, so to speak, was guarding from the Marquis, whose goal and escape it was. In front of him, behind the black group of his opponents, he could see, like a tinted cloud, a small almond bush in flower against the faint line of the sea. The member of the Legion of Honor, whose name it seemed was Colonel Ducroix, approached the professor and Dr. Bull with great politeness, and suggested that the play should terminate with the first considerable hurt. Dr. Bull, however, having been carefully coached by Syme upon this point of policy, insisted with great dignity and in very bad French that it should continue until one of the combatants was disabled. Syme had made up his mind that he could avoid disabling the Marquis and prevent the Marquis from disabling him for at least 20 minutes. In 20 minutes, the Paris train would have gone by. To a man of the well-known skill